Yeah, it's about the bag with the triple single crew. We got Ronnie, Doc, Antonio, the real deal too. They coming and dropping knowledge, you know that they get to work. You know that triple single cover Bay Area sports. You know I'm coming hard, I don't feel like I'm in a hurry. Like number 30, I really got the range like Stephen Curry. Get a couple rings and
What's going on, everybody? This is The Real Deal, and this is the triple single crew. I got my guy, Doc. He's sporting that old school Steve Young, and Ronnie over here sporting his colors as well. What's going on, my guy? Is that Darren Waller?
Yeah, that's
Looking
Darren
good.
Waller.
Nice. Right on, man. Make sure you follow us again on Twitter, Instagram at TSC Bay Area. Subscribe to the channel and leave some comments below as well. We love hearing from you guys.
Yep.
Fellas, I mean, after that big news, that blockbuster deal happened on Friday, it's all we've been thinking about. It's all we've been texting about. So what I want to talk about today is, number one, few things, but number one, if the 49ers are going to select a quarterback, which is what we all think that they will do, because you don't make this kind of trade if you're not going to take a quarterback, who will that player be? Right. So that's number one. And so we're going to get right into it right now, and then I'll get to the other takes later. But yeah, let's get right into that. Who is this guy going to be? I think there's one of three people it could be. But Ronnie, why don't you kick us off and tell us what you thought maybe of these pro days and who you think the 49ers are going to take at number 3.
Yeah, I think for me, if I were John Lynch and, selecting at that number 3 overall pick, I would personally go with Justin Fields. I just feel like, he's a dynamic quarterback. He can throw the ball. He can also run the ball. As we saw in his pro day, he ran a unofficial 4.44. So, he's fast and, he can throw the ball. He's just dynamic. And his toughness, I mean, we've seen it in that playoff game against Clemson, after taking that big hit. And we talked about it before, but, he stayed in the game and he ended up throwing for 6 TDs. So,
Yeah.
That's a guy that I would go with. But I know I said in the last podcast, you can't go wrong with either Zach Wilson or Trey Lance. I just feel like Mac Jones, you kind of just look at him and you question if he would be the right fit for San Francisco. So I would go with Justin Fields out of all those quarterbacks.
And here's one for either one of you. And then Doc, you can also give me your take on this, but is there any chance the 49ers are thinking trade down at this point if they can't decide, or if it lines up to where it's not one of the two guys? I think they have two in mind. If it's not one of those two, can you see them trading down?
I think they'd probably have to get a lot of insight about what the other teams are doing. So maybe some teams are going to call and say, "Hey, we just spoke with this team. They're not taking quarterback either. If you were to trade down to 5 or 6, you'll still get the guy between a Justin Fields or a Trey Lance, right?" So I think it's just really dependent on that. Or if for whatever reason they do fall in love with Mac Jones, and I think a lot of us agree. I think the capital that they gave up to move up to number 3 is not for someone like Mac Jones. That's how I feel. And that's what I've been seeing across different just community boards and San Francisco 49er forums. And so maybe if they do end up falling in love with Mac Jones after some interviews, after viewing just a lot more of his tape, they might realize, you know what, we could probably trade down and get some more assets. But at least we put ourselves in position that if we did want someone at 3, we could have taken that person. I don't know if it would be a good look optics wise, but they do have that flexibility. I don't see it happening at all. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch had their press conference, I want to say yesterday, if not Monday, but I do think it was yesterday. No, actually, I think it was Monday. And they said that they spoke to Jimmy about the fact that he's going to have some competition, and it's pretty clear that they're going QB. And I'm sharing that because I know you communicated that. Are they going to take a QB? I think it's set in stone. They're going to take a quarterback somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if they do, who's your guy? Who's your favorite pro day, film, everything? Who is your pick right now at 3, assuming we believe it's Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2?
Yeah, well, if it's Lawrence 1 and Zach Wilson 2, then for me, it's a no-brainer. It's Justin Fields. To play devil's advocate based off of what you just shared, I think Wilson could be a possibility there too. I'm still a big believer that the Jets might not go quarterback. We were actually just talking about this before we went live, that the Jets might want to keep rolling with Sam Darnold to see what he can do with proper weapons and a proper O-line. They haven't traded him. They haven't moved him. And so who's to say that they might not look for a quarterback in round 2 or round 3 while giving Sam Darnold one more chance under this new regiment to see if he can be successful, so they're not starting from scratch. So if Wilson is there and Fields is there, I'm actually going to say I would still go with Fields. I know the real deal and I have definitely become really fond of Wilson, especially with just how he balled out this year. But something I was reading even earlier is I think there sometimes can be an overanalyzation of things. And Justin Fields was a baller, not just last year, but the year before too. He put up great numbers, was very productive. And then this year he was very productive, but his numbers are skewed because Ohio State didn't play a full season. They only played 8 games. I think in a previous podcast, I said he was injured. That was a mistake. The reason why he didn't have more games under his belt is because they didn't play more games. And
Right.
so one can only imagine if he had some more film, could he have put up even more significant numbers? Could he have had even more highlights that would have made him the clear-cut number 2 quarterback? And for me, the answer is yes. Having seen his pro day, it was impressive. The NFL is evolving. You need a quarterback that can create outside the pocket. And especially with the way Kyle likes to run those bootlegs, who better to run them than a guy that can run a 4.44, even if that is unofficial. And so even with Zach Wilson on the board, Trey Lance on the board, Mac Jones, I'm in agreement with Ronnie. I take Justin Fields, and I don't even think twice about it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think, to support your point, because as a lot of you guys know, they've been watching us, and if you haven't, I am a big Zach Wilson fan. And again, this is going back to, because I think I started scouting him before really anybody else, so I started watching him probably around October of last year, early October. And to give my support though to Fields, the body of work is there. It's much more, right? Like people have talked about, and they're right. Look, Zach Wilson technically has only played this season as his full season, right? Justin Fields' body of work is larger, where we can see 2 years of this, right? After he transferred. So, and you're talking about playing at a Power 5 conference, playing at Ohio State, being the main guy there. And really, it's been about Lawrence and Fields this entire time since high school. So we know that these are the 2 best scouted, most scrutinized players, just the 2 best athletes at the quarterback position for probably the better part of 8 years, because that's how far we can go back to really start to, maybe not that far, but yeah, about that far, to really see who will be the guy to succeed in the NFL, or can both succeed. I agree with you guys. I don't think you can go wrong with him. I think that he is a very dynamic player. There's that word again. I love dynamic players, dynamic athletes. He has got an incredible arm. And I think I told you, Doc, to me, is the best arm probably in this entire class. Okay. I know Zach Wilson, like I said, I'm a fan, and that throw he made was incredible, but Fields did the same thing. And I think he probably even threw it a little further when I look back at that, at his pro day. And, like you guys said, incredible talent. I would not be upset as a 49er fan if that's the clay that Kyle has to mold going forward. So that's my take on that. But going back to the trade down thing, I agree with you. I just wanted to throw that out there because it's been kind of a narrative that I kind of heard. Well, we got into the top 3. If we really wanted to, we could trade back. I don't see that. And I agree with you guys. I think after Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, and Lance, those are the top guys. After that, it's a big gap between them and Mac Jones. I mean, I get what he did at Alabama. Someone said, I think on the radio, I heard AJ McCarron was also really good at Alabama, so Tua, we can go on and on and on. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a Pro Bowl level quarterback in the NFL. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think I saw, it was on Instagram. It was like a post where somebody said, put Mac Jones and Justin Fields on, let's say, one of the not so talented Division I football teams. Who would probably lead the team to more wins? And in their comment, right, they said Justin Fields, like no doubt, right? Justin Fields would probably be able to lift up a team and actually carry them on his back. Whereas we don't know if Mac Jones can do that. I mean, Mac Jones had so many playmakers: Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Didn't they have another receiver too? I'm forgetting, but I think they had 3 dynamic receivers, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just forgetting the other guy's name.
Yeah, I can't recall his name, but I think you're right. They had more than enough weapons.
Yeah, because I think Jalen Waddle, was he the one that got injured during the season and came back in the bowl game? because somebody suffered
I
a pretty
believe so.
serious injury. Yeah, and they still
Mhm.
had another receiver that was also a 5-star recruit, right? So with
Yep.
Alabama, you got weapons after weapons after weapons. You're throwing to NFL talent in college football, right? Whereas
Right.
for Justin Fields, I think the only real NFL talent, like first round potential pick, was Olave, I believe is his name, the
Yep.
receiver who decided not to come out this year for whatever reason, right? So maybe he was
Yeah.
told he wasn't first round talent. That's the only reason I think he wouldn't, because he balled out this past year. And so something else I'm gonna just throw out there, and it's gonna be pretty controversial, but I do think that there's always gonna be a stigma for black quarterbacks that are fast. Usually when there's a black quarterback that's extremely athletic, everyone starts questioning their mental ability, their IQ, their ability to read progressions, right? I mean, that's what happened with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was balling out at Louisville. It wasn't just with his legs. He was throwing dimes down the field. Only reason he slipped to where he did was because of those questions and some of those stigmas. And I know we might maybe lose some viewers here, but there is some truth to that. And to just completely disregard it, I think would be irresponsible as someone who's trying to give open and honest, takes about just the NFL and the quarterback position, right? And so I think Justin Field is having to fight those stigmas as well. Because he ran a 4.4. Now the argument is like, oh, he's a one progression read QB. I've seen tape and I've seen him go boom, nope, boom, no, boom. There you go. I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Maybe the one progressions is because he has that incredible arm talent. And maybe he gets stubborn sometimes, like, nope, I'm going to make this fit in that tight window because my arm is going to make that ball zip. And it doesn't always work. And, and those are some experiences and some tape that he's going to have to grow from. But I
Yeah.
just need to put that out there because I think that's something that's also a part of the conversation that's not being talked about as openly as it probably should.
No, I totally agree. That you can see, look at Russell Wilson. I'll use Russell as an example. There's no way I watched Russell's tape even just earlier this year, and I was thinking, how in the hell did they ever mess this up? And this guy wasn't a first round pick and a top 10 pick. He was literally the most accurate, best deep ball thrower, best scrambler, one of the best you've ever seen, really, from when in college. I mean, just what he was doing at Wisconsin, I was like, this guy's incredible. So it was like, to me, it wasn't a shock but keep in mind, I hadn't watched his tape because we didn't scout him. He went to the Seahawks, and then I just happened to look at it and I said, this is crazy. That guy fell to what, the fourth round? No, the third round. The third round. And then Dak went in the fourth round. It was another guy who actually I did scout that year. And I was like,
I saw Dak too.
I saw a lot of Dak, and I was like, I knew who he was. And I'm like, no, I think when they took him in the fourth, I'm like, why did he fall that much? And I thought he had a chance to be really good despite falling to the fourth. Right. So, that's not a narrative that, like you said, it's a polarizing one. It's one where some people will agree, some people will disagree, but because it's a position that's traditionally had, I mean, look, Tom Brady is for almost 44 years old. Okay. And he's a Caucasian American quarterback, and he's considered the greatest of all time. I don't consider him the greatest of all time. To me, it's Joe Montana, who is also Caucasian. But one thing about Joe was one of my reasons is Joe could move. Yeah. Joe could move out of the pocket. He was a complete player. So, and so some of these things that you're saying about what are these traits that are being nitpicked about maybe white quarterbacks versus black quarterbacks, there might be something there. I think there definitely is something there when you see guys, like I said, like Russell Wilson and Dak falling so far. And why aren't they being scrutinized? Why is Trevor Lawrence not being scrutinized enough for his maybe lack of athleticism and his missed throws and sometimes lack of field vision? He should be. Absolutely should be. He's 6'6". How does he ever get a ball batted down, or how do you ever overthrow somebody? Yeah. But it happens, and those things should be scrutinized. And you're right, we haven't heard any scrutiny whatsoever. It's been set for what, months? 6 months ago, 7 months ago, Lawrence number one, and then it's Wilson or Fields and what have you. So it's a valid point.
And Lawrence is the prototype, right? QB, 6'6", 6'5", long hair, Caucasian as well. And again, not to be political, right? But yeah. Right, like you said, there's been almost no whispers of anything wrong with this guy, and he is not the perfect player, and of course he's not, because there's no such thing as a perfect player. But again, I think just there needs to be an acknowledgement that certain things get nitpicked, as you said, and when you look really deep, there are other elements besides just the position, and sometimes it is, what does that person look like, right? Are they full of tattoos? Now tattoos are super normalized, but at one point, right, that was a stigma too. Like, oh man, that might be a troublemaker, got a lot of tattoos. Now you're seeing everybody with tattoos. JJ Redick got tattoos. You know what I mean? Like anybody can get them clearly. But what are your takes, Ronnie? I want to make sure that the audience gets a chance to hear from you, who's definitely on the younger side, right? You're 17. You're growing up in what this new norm of a world is. What are your thoughts on some of the things me and the Real Deal are mentioning?
Oh man, I definitely agree with you guys. I mean, you got the quarterbacks on my name, Russell Wilson, you know, Lamar Jackson, you know, they fell late. Like other black quarterbacks that I can think of, like just straight off my head. I know they're former #1 picks like Michael Vick and Cam Newton. I know I wasn't around for Michael Vick, but you know, it seemed like a lot of people hyped him up a lot. He was the #1 pick. And Cam Newton was the #1 pick too. So I mean, that's why, you know, when, you know, you got those guys like, oh, like, you know, I have a chip on my shoulder. I feel like the stuff that you guys are bringing up about that kind of hate, that's what they mean by they have a chip on their shoulder, that to show what they can actually do. So that's on the younger side. That's what we say. Just, oh yeah, we got a chip on our shoulder. You know, we got to prove these people wrong that, you know, we can do it all and that kind of stuff. And those quarterbacks that you guys name, they've been doing that. They've been doing that. They've been getting paid. So definitely agree with you guys on that kind of stuff though. Just that's what I believe what they mean by they have a chip on their shoulder, just to give them a certain kind of motivation, just to go out there and ball out. So
yeah, and to show that black quarterbacks are just as capable as white quarterbacks, right? Maybe there'll come a day where we have a Latinx quarterback, right, or an Asian quarterback. It's interesting that you don't see these things, right? And no one questions it. Nobody really thinks twice about it. But it's important to at least acknowledge. And it's like you said, Ronnie, Cam Newton and Michael Vick were #1 overall picks, and yet they still felt like they weren't valued in the way that they should have been because people were constantly still trying to find something wrong with them. And again, there's something wrong with every quarterback. Tom Brady isn't perfect. If he was, he would have won every single Super Bowl he was in. And guess what?
Exactly.
And that's just the reality of that position. And so my hope is that the minds of the scouts and the GMs just continues to evolve and ultimately looks at film and ultimately looks at talent. And yes, have a dinner with these guys and make sure that you feel good about who they are as individuals beyond, right, the color of their skin, just that they're good human beings and that you could feel like, right, because to be fair, they are paying them millions of dollars, right? So it is an investment. So it's okay to make sure that you take your time to make sure it's a good investment. But at the end of the day, base it off of their skill level, their game tape, and who they are. Everything else, that nitpicking stuff, because of maybe the color of their skin, I think that needs to be left at the door because a lot of people have lost their jobs focusing too much on that than getting the best player that they can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I'll just throw another name at you. You know, here's a guy from way back in the day in the 80s, Warren Moon. Was one of my favorite quarterbacks ever to watch. Just the smoothest delivery, cannon for an arm. Had to go to the Canadian League to go prove himself before somebody looked and said, we need to bring this guy back to the NFL because he's going to make us a lot of money and win us a lot of games. But how many years of his prime did he have to waste in an inferior league? Simply because, again, it was a position that wasn't thought of as traditionally one for African Americans. So, you know, it will still be a stigma. I totally agree. And it's one where luckily you have these incredible playmakers like Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes that are going to keep breaking it down and hopefully breaking it down completely very soon. Because at the end of the day, as fans of the sport, we just want to see the greatest athletes do what they want to do, what makes them happy, and based, like I said, on their skill, based solely on their skill and their ability, and nothing else on the minds. But yeah, definitely, it's a great point. Anything else to add, guys?
Yeah, let me just share one thing. If you're still watching after this conversation that probably took a bit of a turn that you weren't expecting, I appreciate you. And the reason why we're going this deep as well into these conversations is because we do want to bring in our skill sets beyond just our football knowledge, right? As I might have mentioned in our first episode, the Real Deal and I, we're college counselors. Like, these are the type of things that we talk about on a daily basis to figure out how to best support our students who historically haven't always been supported properly, right? So we're just using that same lens and applying it to the sports, right, realm of the world, which is still very applicable. And we want to make sure that we engage young people like Ronnie and allow them to also share their truth and their thoughts and perspectives on these aspects of the conversation, because it's important for everybody and anybody to hear. I want to give a shout out to a guy who I think does this really well on a national platform, although not perfect, but Shannon Sharpe, he doesn't hesitate to talk about these things. As a black man who played in the NFL, he is very much big on making sure that he is just as candid as he can be about his thoughts and his feelings when it pertains to issues revolving around race, discrimination, prejudice, and just all of this stuff that does exist even within the sports world too. And so that's the last thing I'm gonna say as it pertains to this kind of direction that I took us on. And I just want to say thank you, Real Deal and Ronnie, for rocking with me, because just to let y'all know, they didn't know I was gonna take it in that way. So I appreciate y'all for giving me your honest thoughts about it too.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, I've got nothing else to add. I think that's exactly right. And like I said, when you said we're counselors and we see this every day, I just smile because it is something we see. I smile because it's very commonplace, and it seems like people aren't as aware of how commonplace it is, but it is extremely commonplace. So, and it should be something we discuss. So, thank you so much for bringing it that direction. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So with that, I just want to wrap us up for this portion of it and of this conversation about the 49ers, about obviously about quarterbacks and traits and how they get assessed. It's fascinating stuff. And we're going to have a little bit more for you guys coming up. So thank you once again. Make sure you follow the channel, subscribe. And this is the Triple Single Crew signing out. See you in a bit.
Yes, sir.